The cat just came to say hi. I don't know if the camera can see her. Oh, there you go. Now you can. You're gonna sit right in the camera. You're gonna sit? You're gonna be cute? I will always stand by the fact that avoidance is not maturity. And it's also not peace. I think there's a really big difference between the concept of distancing yourself, maybe burning bridges, things like that, where you do need to distance yourself for your own well-being, for something that is maybe cycling, snowballing, not really helpful, something that is really important to distance yourself on. And I think there's a fine line between that and avoidance of responsibility, right? Does that make sense? I think that there are some things that, like, yes, you do want to step back when things are, too much, right? I think stepping back is good. And I think stepping back is allowed in most cases, right? Like, I think you're allowed to step back, but in order to step back, I think that there are things that you need to take responsibility for first, right? Does that make sense? I think that responsibility is needed when we have anything going on, right? And I think that something that we very easily confuse is that avoidance is your way of stepping back and taking care of yourself. I think we often see avoidance as like, well, I'm stepping back, so I'm actually doing something good for myself, and people are mad at me for stepping back. Like, that doesn't seem like I'm doing something for myself. And I think that that is so true, that stepping back is important for yourself. If by me stepping back is going to leave everyone else in this, mess, what makes it seem okay that I'm allowed to just leave and everyone else is stuck with my mess, right? Like, that doesn't seem reasonable. I think about situations where, maybe if you're in a career or something and someone says, well, this is a mess, I'm going to leave, right? Then other people have to clean up that mess. And I think it's important to at least, I think about even in any sort of career, if you are resigning or something, if you're leaving, you usually do something in order to help make it easier for that next person to come in, because you don't want to leave a bunch of loose ends for someone else to clean up, right? And I think it's the same thing in any sort of aspect, in any sort of social situation here, where it is really hard to know the difference between stepping back and avoidance, because sometimes avoidance can feel like you're doing something for yourself, when in reality, you're not. In reality, it's immaturity. In reality, it's this, I think, fear of accepting responsibility, of being able to see, yes, this happened. Yes, I have a part in it. Yes, I need to take responsibility, right? We as humans feel when there is something wrong, when we are, maybe when we did something wrong, it is really, really, really hard for us to take responsibility for it. And I see this in my everyday life. I see this in so many different situations where it could even be as simple as you made a tiny little mistake, right? But when someone tells you, hey, you did this wrong, or hey, that, it brings up our fight or flight mode. And a lot of times it can be flight. We talk about the fight mode a lot more because it's a lot more obvious, I think. But a lot of times it can be flight too. And for a lot of people, it is flight, especially in women. Not saying that it always is, but I think that that's something that we tend to maybe experience more, because I think that that's kind of what society has taught us in terms of well, you can't really fight back. That's not feminine or whatever. So instead, you kind of just retreat, you kind of leave things alone. And that's part of what we've been doing because of society, right? When, something's wrong, maybe you just stay quiet instead of speaking up about it. So then the same thing happens when we do something wrong. It's easy for us to just retreat back instead of taking responsibility for it, because we've never really been used to using our voices. That's not really something that is, I guess, I don't want to say it's societally unacceptable, but it's not really societally acceptable either, because we do have, the patriarchy. We do have, this is an issue. It is real. And I think that it is important to be able to recognize that. I was talking recently in one of my classes about what does the term the patriarchy mean? It does not mean I hate men. It means there is a system that is in place hundreds of years, thousands of years, it is in place. It doesn't mean that that one person you're talking to, if you're a guy listening to this, it doesn't mean that I'm saying you are the problem, right? Like, that's not what I'm saying. It's very much so a system, right? And I think it's important to recognize that that system is there, even if it doesn't mean that, like, okay, every single man sucks. Like, that's not what it means. And I think that anyone who makes it sound that way, like, I'm sorry, but that's not, just don't, please, like, don't do that. Like, it doesn't mean that every single guy sucks. It just means that this is a system that makes things maybe different for women, more difficult for women, or any gender that is not man. We are not taught to speak up, which also means that a lot of times, and this is people in general too, are not necessarily taught how to have interpersonal conversations, to be able to communicate, to be able to stand up for yourself when something is going wrong, to be able to do any of that. I think it's something that we really struggle with as a society in general, especially after COVID, because we all really, I know I suffered from, like, I didn't know how to communicate with people after COVID because I hadn't seen people for like a year, which is still crazy. And it really impacted us. It really, really impacted us. But I think that it's really important to draw that line between what is avoidance and what is being responsible, taking care of yourself and stepping back. And to me, that line is avoidance is when you do not take responsibility, when you leave because if you stayed, it would be uncomfortable to experience growth. It would be uncomfortable to assume responsibility, to experience growth, to have hard conversations. I think that that is huge. I think that that is so important. And I have said it before, and I will say it again. Growth does not happen without change. You have to get uncomfortable to grow, because otherwise, how are you going to learn to grow? Like, something needs to basically make you think differently, make you do something differently that you've never really done before, right? Like, that is uncomfortable, and it could be a major amount of discomfort, and you have to be careful, right? Or it could be a minimal amount, like someone says something and you're like, it's interesting, never thought about it that way, Like, it could be all of those things, but I do not think that growth happens without discomfort and change. I think that that is really important. And so by avoiding, I think that that is when you are neglecting or running away from that change, running away from that growth, when it could be something really good for you, something like taking responsibility, something like having difficult conversations, where stepping away is maybe what you need in order to grow, right? And stepping away doesn't just mean, hey, I didn't do anything wrong in this situation, so I'm just going to step away. It could also mean, hey, like, maybe I had a part in this, and let me take responsibility for that. Let me have conversations. Let me talk to people. Let me see what I can do to do my best. And then I step away, because it might get to the point where it's just spiraling and not going anywhere, and it's actually harming people instead. I'm trying to think of an example here that I could talk about that, like, helps it make more sense, because I think that that line is, like, if you really think about it, it can be clear. But it also is very difficult to tell, especially since in our daily lives, like, our subconscious tells us to run. Like, that is that flight mode. Like, it tells us to run because any sort of discomfort feels like danger. I mean, your mind doesn't really know what is good discomfort versus bad. And so, like, it feels like danger, it's going to run, right? Because maybe it could be like a death threat or something. Your brain doesn't know that having difficult conversations is not a death threat. It doesn't know that. It just knows that, hey, this is something that we're feeling that's uncomfortable. What have we done in the past? We're going to run away. Great. Let's do that again, right? And that's not, like, it does take conscious effort to change that pattern. And it's interesting because I think that with a lot of times you can see that this pattern has happened multiple times throughout the years, right? Like, you can see that maybe, like, oh, something uncomfortable happened. Maybe something, you hurt someone, you run away rather than doing something to make it better. Then it happens again. You hurt someone again, you run away instead of making something better, right? And I'm not just saying it when it happens when you did something wrong, but like in any sort of difficult conversation. Okay, here's an example. Maybe kids in their, that are in elementary school, right? Like, there are multiple ways that you could go about maybe them not getting along with a teacher not really liking them or something, which teachers are not supposed to do, but it's possible, right? The options are either the kid avoids it, the parents avoid it, they don't want to have confrontation. So it ends up hurting this child because they're not getting the education they should need, and they're also, maybe getting hurt by feeling like their teacher doesn't like them. The other option is confrontation. Doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't need to be a scary thing where you talk about it. You say, hey, parent-teacher conferences, we're noticing this. We're a little concerned about our child. Like, what can we do to work with it? That is a situation where instead of avoiding it and actively hurting yourself and other people, you are trying to do something about it and having a difficult conversation. Like, that is a very difficult conversation. I am not a parent. I cannot imagine saying that to a teacher, though. Like, that would be really difficult. And I get it, because that's like, these conversations are not meant to be easy, right? So you could go talk to the teacher, say like, hey, we're having this issue, right? How can we work together to make it better for this student, for our child, right? Great, awesome, amazing. That is you addressing the issue. And from there, if things still do not continue to get better, if things still are an issue, if nothing gets better, you maybe talk to the principal about it too. That is when you're allowed to step away. That is when you're allowed to go and talk to the administration and say, hey, we'd like our child to be moved to a different classroom. Because that happens, right? That does happen. It happens. And it could be with a teacher. It could be with another student, right? Maybe they're getting bullied or something. Maybe they're, maybe they're doing the bullying. Maybe they're just getting distracted during class because there's another student that's distracting them. Maybe their best friend is in the class and they can't focus anymore, right? And that's the situation where it's like, you can have these difficult conversations and do your best, and maybe you still do need to walk away from it, which means switching your child to another classroom, maybe to a different school, right? That happens. Or you can avoid it. I think that if we think about it in terms of like being a parent and having a child, right? Like, I think that it's a better way to visualize it, because can you see how like that is not going to, like, that makes things difficult on the child, right? And it's not the child's mess to clean up because they're a child, right? I think this is something that is between the adults, if that makes sense. And if the parents do decide not to do anything about it, then is that hurting the child? Is that avoidance actively hurting the child? And is it actively hurting them too? Like, what is that child? Is that child going to grow up thinking that they can't like stand up for themselves, right? Like, and it's that thing. I'm not saying this about parents or anything, right? And there's also so many different reasons why you do things. Like, maybe the child needs to work on their own things. Maybe it's the end of the year and you just have to get through the last month. Like, I'm not saying that that's bad parenting to not, but you know what I mean? All of it to be said, it's the same thing in your life. If you avoid something, you may think that you're stepping away. You may think that you're making it better. But if there is something that you actively need to take responsibility for, like if you know that you did something wrong, if you know that people are hurt, if you know that, like, even if you didn't do anything wrong and you know that people are hurt, you know that people are trying to talk to you, you know that, like, there are conversations that could be had, but you're not having them, that is avoidance. It's not peace. It's not, I'm choosing my peace rather than, get in issues. It's not peace. That's not choosing peace. That's choosing immaturity. That's choosing to run away from the issues. And I think that that's really important. This is not me being like, I'm accusing you of this, right? But I think that it's something that, is important to talk about because I see it so often. I see it in myself, right? Like, I've totally done that before. And I like to hope that I don't anymore, but like, it is possible. And sometimes that kind of thing happens. And I really hope that I can continue to work on that as well in my own life. And I hope that by hearing this, like, it's just something I've never heard. I've never heard someone talk about the difference between setting boundaries and distancing yourself for your own well-being and need versus avoidance. I've never heard that difference. I think about, if I can think about sometimes in my life, what would I even like use this as an example? Okay, here. Example. I remember in like elementary school, I was having problems with my friends, which if they watch this, they're going to laugh about it because we still laugh about it today. I guess I wouldn't say problems, but we were in disagreements, right? And it started with, and I don't even remember how it started, but basically it was something around the area of like, okay, we're in disagreements, so it's kind of like, well, we're just going to stop talking to you, right? Or I'm going to stop talking to you, we're going to stop talking to you, whatever way. I don't even remember what it was. And the original thing was, okay, we're just not friends anymore because that's middle school. Until eventually we realized, wait a second, no, we still want to be friends, right? Like we were avoiding it here in this case, which obviously I did not have that much of a mental capacity to understand it was avoidance at the time. But eventually got to the point where it was like, okay, look, like we can't avoid each other here. We are in the same class. So instead, what I'm going to do is offer like a peace offering. I don't really know why you guys are mad at me. I don't really know why I'm mad at you. Like, it's just kind of this thing that happened. So I'm going to offer a peace offering, which was like a toy or a piece of candy or something, because that's what middle school is. And I offered that, and they were like, wow, that's really sweet. You know, very excited about it, very happy. And we talked, and they said, yeah, I was just jealous or annoyed or something. And I was like, well, I was jealous or annoyed. And then it was like, oh, so we were both feeling the same thing. And then it was like, oh, okay, great. We talked and we were fine, right? Like, that's the thing. I think that it's like you offer a peace offering, whether that's a conversation, whether that's like, you know, like you have to show that you're making effort. I think that is the really big thing, because not only does that, you know, show that you tried, because there are times where you can try your best, you can do everything you can, and it's just not going to make it right. Like if you know, like, I mean, I don't think that was everything I could have done in that situation, but if I offered candy to my friends in middle school and they were like, we still hate you, I probably would have walked away at that point. I would have tried to talk about it, and then I would have walked away, because obviously those aren't my friends then, right? They liked it, they are my friends, we're still friends to this day. It's great, awesome, right? All of that to be said, like, you offer up a peace offering because you need to show that you are making an effort, that you recognize there are feelings, you're making an effort, you're doing something to be trying. And then if that continues to not work is when you can step away. And I think that is the huge, huge, huge line there. It's a fine line, but it's also like abundantly clear if you really think about it. Is that the difference? Is that what we are meant to do? Because I do think that that is important, but I also think it's something that we just never learn about. I've never had anyone explain any of this to me. Well, except for my mother, and I'm lucky because she just is really, really good at having difficult conversations. Love her. And any of my friends will also tell you that, like, my friends say that she's just like this icon, and I'm like, wow, I love my mama. Actually, maybe for the next Sit With Me episode, I might call my mom and have her on. That would be kind of fun. Whatever. I think that is the differentiation there. I think that is that fine line. And I think that it's really, really important to recognize that fine line and to do your best to acknowledge it, because I think that we're not perfect. No one's perfect, right? We're never going to truly 100% know what the difference is. Maybe sometimes we'll get it wrong. I don't even know if it would say wrong. There's some situations where maybe there is no right answer, right? But I think doing your best to be able to, in the end, look back at something and say, yep, I did my best. I don't regret how I responded to something. I don't regret what I did. I did my best. I made an effort. I showed care. I acted out of care and love, out of trying to do the best thing. And that's it, right? Like, I think that that's ultimately all we can do in life. But when there's something that you're actively avoiding, when there's something that you know, like, you know if it's avoiding or not. You know it. I think that most of the time we know it. But if you're questioning it, that might be trying to tell you something. That might be a place for improvement. That might be a place to explore more. And I think that's really important. I think that we don't talk enough about how it's okay to be uncomfortable. So here's me telling you, it's okay to be uncomfortable. In fact, I would say it's good to be uncomfortable. Because if you're uncomfortable right now, but rather than trying to get rid of that discomfort and instead trying to dig deep and figure out why it's there, that's when you're going to grow. That's when you're going to be a mature human being, someone who knows what they're doing, someone who's constantly growing, and someone that people are going to look up to. That's all I have to say this week. I don't know what else to say. I'll see you next week.